Welcome, grade 10. Today's topic will be Introduction to Banking. Your lessons are as follows. After this interactive PowerPoint presentation, you should be able to define the term bank, identify the four types of banks operating in the Bahamas, summarize the role and functions of central bank, and explain the following types of banks. And those banks are commercial banks, merchant banks, and offshore banks. Now, when I say explain, we're going to look at some of the characteristics of these banks and some of the services that they offer. Additionally, we're going to identify a few examples of these banks in the Bahamas. Now we're going to come up with a definition of the term bank. I'm sure many of you went to the bank with your parents before, maybe someone older, it could be your older brother, sister, aunt, uncle. And you've witnessed some of the things that take place in a bank, or just watching television, you've been exposed to some of the services banking institutions offer to the general public. So, exactly what is the definition of a bank? First of all, a bank is a place, it's an establishment, it's a facility. Maybe you've seen your parents giving the bank tellers a check and receiving cash. Maybe you've witnessed your parents going to the bank when they wanted to purchase a home or a car, or probably take you on a Disney World vacation. So, in essence, the definition of a bank is an establishment for issuing, borrowing, exchanging, and safeguarding money. Now, let's dissect that definition a bit more. Establishment meaning a place. For issuing, issuing means giving something out. Borrowing means the item that you're using is not yours, but someone is lending it to you, meaning you should give it back. Exchanging means if I give you a check, you're going to give me cash. Or if I give you BSD, meaning Bahamian dollar, you're going to give me USD, which is the US dollar. And safeguarding. Safeguarding means keeping something safe. For example, the Bahamas, unfortunately, we have a number of break-ins every year where persons come into your home, invade your privacy, and steal from you. Or we have experienced house fires and hurricanes before. All of this is what puts us in a position to feel as though we need the bank, which is a secured, guarded facility to keep our money safe. So again, let's say the definition for the term bank. A bank is an establishment for issuing, borrowing, exchanging, and safeguarding money. Let's move on. Now we have a number of type of banks in the Bahamas. But the four main types of banks that I'm going to discuss are central bank, commercial or retail banks, merchant or investment banks, offshore or overseas banks. Now I'm giving you the alternative name for these banks because who knows how the bank will be referred to on your national exam. So you need to know both terms. So you need to know a commercial bank is also called a retail bank. A merchant bank is also called an investment bank. And an offshore bank is also called an overseas bank. Let's now look more into What exactly is the central bank? Every country has a central bank. The central bank, in my opinion, as I would have told previous students before, is the bank of all other banks. The central bank is the mother bank. Okay? So if you look at your screen, the central bank of any country is the bank that controls the other banks, meaning everything goes through the central bank. Some of the most prominent responsibilities of the central bank are as follows. The central bank is responsible for issuing legal tender. Now, a few months ago when we did money and banking, which was a topic um, last term, you learned the difference between legal and non-legal tenders. So I just want to bring that back to you at this time. When we're referring to tender, we're obviously talking about a form of payment or a method of payment. Legal tender means a payment that must be accepted in exchange for goods and services. And non-legal tender means it's a form of payment that you can use, but wholesalers, retailers, business owners does not necessarily have to accept it in exchange for goods and services, so they have a choice. What are some of the legal tenders in the Bahamas? The legal tender is basically our dollar notes and coins. Now, as you know, by the end of this year, the 1 cent coin will no longer be a legal tender, and that means stores do not have to accept 1 cent from any customer as of December 2020. Non-legal tender, on the other hand, would be debit cards and credit cards, checks, vouchers, etc. Those things that can be used as a method of payment but does not have to be accepted in exchange for goods and services. Another responsibility of the central bank is to issue licenses to banks and other financial institutions. Issuing licenses, just like a marine registration or a motor vehicle registration, cars and boats for commercial use should not be operating without a license. The same thing applies to banks and other financial institutions. They should apply to be licensed to operate in a country. Another responsibility of the central bank is the banker to the government and domestic bank. If I were to break that down for you, it simply says the government goes to the central bank to do their banking. Other banks must go to the central bank to do their banking. So whereas the general public would go to commercial banks and merchant banks and investment banks to do our banking business, the central bank is there for other banks and the government. The central bank is also responsible for designing the dollar. Money is supposed to be scarce. You're not supposed to just walk outside, plant a money seed, and 2 weeks later a tree appears. You're supposed to work for money. So you're not supposed to just go and pick it up off the ground from outside. I'm saying that to say that money is printed and it is not printed here in the Bahamas. But our dollar note is designed in the Bahamas. For example, last year sometime we had a new $50 note came out. The note, some of the characteristics of the note has changed. It's feeling more of a plastic material. It also appears to have a little chip embedded in the $50 note. To me, it resembles a Canadian dollar. And one of the most known reasons as to why dollar notes are redesigned and reprinted is to avoid fraud or to avoid counterfeits. So our dollar notes are designed here. I can't say how often, but I know within the last decades we've had a new $5, $10, a new $1, a new $20, a new $50, and a new $100 note. As a matter of fact, for the last decade, all of our dollar notes has been redesigned and printed. And that is the responsibility of the central bank. The central bank is also responsible for promoting and maintaining monetary stability. And last, the central bank is also responsible for safeguarding the value of the country's dollar. The value of the country's dollar would simply mean making sure that our dollar value stays on par as much as possible. Currently, the US dollar is the most powerful dollar in the world. And the reason for that is because the US dollar is accepted in almost every country. And it can be used to pay for goods and services in most countries where persons would travel. The Bahamian dollar is said to be on par with the US dollar. That's what we're told. But when you get into foreign currency exchange in the later on in the 11th and 12th grade, you're going to learn that our dollar value is not actually on par with the US dollar. But in the Bahamas and in the US, well, in the Bahamas, not the US, in the Bahamas, it is still seen as a 1-to-1 ratio. However, if you were to go into the US, some stores actually allow you to pay for goods or for goods using a Bahamian dollar. I know Ross, for example, allows it. And you would know that when you look at the receipt, the dollar value is not on par. Our dollar value in the Bahamas is not on par with the US dollar value. But that's another topic for another time. As far as we know, in the Bahamas, the country's dollar value is on par with the US dollar value, and it is the central bank responsibility to safeguard our dollar value. So if something is going wrong in our country and the banks feel as though we may soon have a recession or our dollar value is being threatened because of a downturn in the economy, the central bank is supposed to be the one advising the government on what to do and what not to do. Maybe we should increase exports to assist our dollar value. Maybe we should drop prices. So the central bank should be the one giving the government advice on what to do and what not to do to safeguard our dollar value. The central bank, and one of the notes that I don't have on your slide, the central bank also regulates and supervises the banking sector. And when I say that, I mean they go out there and they set, the central bank is the one to set interest rates or tell a bank that this interest rate is too high or too low. And they also regulate what's happening in the banking sector so that customers are not exploited and so that customers are not taken advantage of. Our central bank of the Bahamas is located on Market Street, Nassau, Bahamas. That's near the downtown area, right before you get to like Government House, right in that area around the bend. Every country has a central bank. So if you see on your screen, there is a Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, Bank of Jamaica, Central Bank of Aruba, Barbados, Dominican Republic, etc. So every country has its own central bank, which is the mother of all banks within that country. The next bank, which is the most popular bank in most countries, but particularly in the Bahamas, would be commercial banks. Commercial banks are also referred to as retail banks because generally, if you were a retailer, you would know that retailers provide goods and services for the general public, and they come in contact directly with the consumer. A retail bank or a commercial bank does the same thing. Commercial banks, also called retail banks, provide a wide range of banking services to the general public. Some examples of these services are savings and checking accounts, mortgages, personal loans, debit cards, and credit cards. Now, I want to stick a pin in the difference between a savings and a checking account. A number of persons, many persons in the Bahamas have a checking account. Probably 5 out of every 10 persons do. A savings account is used to do exactly what the title says, to save. It's good to use a savings account because unlike when your money is at home, it's basically a dead investment. You could have the money in a piggy bank or you could have the money under a mattress and it's not growing. It's not receiving any form of interest. A savings bank, well, a savings account, it has a return. And the return on investment is interest. And when I say return on investment, I mean by you saving, you are getting something from saving through a banking institution. A checking account, on the other hand, also called a current account, is an account that is needed in order for persons to write checks. And a check is a form of payment. But you'll learn more about checking accounts in the next lesson. The difference between a mortgage and a personal loan. A mortgage is a long-term liability. A personal loan is a short-term liability, meaning a mortgage takes years to pay off, about 15, 20, 25. But you could also decrease the amount of time to pay a mortgage by putting extra monies on the principal as it becomes available to you. A personal loan is not as large, but it's paid back rather quickly. The main difference between a debit and a credit card, a debit card is monies that you're using from your personal account, and a credit card is money that you're using, but the money was loaned to you. So with a debit card, the money is being taken directly from your bank account. And with the credit card, the money that you're using does not belong to you. And the disadvantage with using a credit card versus a debit card is a credit card must be paid back. Not only is the money paid back, the money must be paid back with interest. When we dealt with the topic money and banking, I would have alluded to you that credit cards, in my opinion, is of the devil. So when you grow up, grade 10, if you don't need a credit card, don't get one. Because the interest rates on credit cards are very, very high. And because the money is so readily available to you, most times you would be tempted to use the credit card even when you don't need to. Some examples of retail or commercial banks in the Bahamas are Commonwealth Bank, First Caribbean Bank, Bank of the Bahamas, Fidelity Bank, Finco Bank, Royal Bank of Canada, and the Bank of Nova Scotia. And I'm pretty sure you've seen all of them as you drove around New Providence, or you've seen it somewhere, maybe during a television commercial. But these are our commercial banks here in the Bahamas. Functions of commercial banks or retail banks. We would have already discussed these, but I'm still going to highlight them. To safeguard customers' money, to provide loans and cash advances, transfer money from one place to another. So for example, I can be in New Providence and I can send money to someone with a bank account who's located in Andros. Make it easier for customers to pay for goods locally or abroad. So that's, for example, with the COVID-19 situation at the moment, a number of persons are resorting to using online stores. This would be impossible without commercial banks, because commercial banks and the services they provide enables us to pay for goods online and then to have them delivered to us. The same thing would happen if we were to engage in international trade. International trade being bringing goods into the country from overseas. This would be impossible without the use of commercial banks and the services they offer, using a debit or a credit card or PayPal. The next type of bank we're going to discuss is merchant banks. In banking, a merchant bank is a traditional term for an investment bank. Now, when you hear the word investment, what comes to your mind? Because what comes to my mind is I'm investing into something. And by investing into something, I'm going to get a profit back from what I'm investing in. That is what investment bank means to me. But if you look at the screen, it says investment banks only loan money to business to buy, sell, or merge. They fund IPOs, and I should have put on the screen what IPOs means. IPOs is initial public offering for profit. So when persons are coming up with a company they wish to establish, they may not have all of the money they want to have to create that business. Persons can raise capital through offering shares. When you buy a share, you become a part of that company's ownership. But by you buying shares, the person who owns the company, they come up with sufficient capital to create the establishment. Where do you go to acquire this type of funds? If you don't have the funds readily available to buy shares, you go to a merchant bank. Because a merchant bank would be the one to lend money to a business or to a person who wish to buy, sell, or merge a company. And that is the way they make profit. So whereas a commercial bank makes profit, did I say you have to go to a commercial bank? No. You have to go to an investment bank, sorry. So whereas a commercial bank makes profit through ABM fees and cleaning fees and saving fees, etc., an investment bank makes profit through loans to businesses who wish to buy, sell, and merge their companies. They may also act as stockbrokers and mutual fund administrators. Examples of merchant or investment banks are Deltec Bank Limited and Julius Baer Bank. I think both of them are actually located on East Bay Street or West Bay Street, one of those. The final type of bank that we're going to discuss today would be offshore banks. When you think about offshore, I'm thinking about the sea. I'm thinking about I'm standing here on a sandbank and this other bank is located away from me, but there is bodies of water that is separating us. And that is exactly what an offshore bank is also referred to as. It's also referred to as an overseas bank. An offshore bank is a bank located outside the country of residence of the depositor, typically in a low tax jurisdiction or tax haven that provides financial and legal advantages. So let's now dissect that definition. An offshore bank is located outside the country of residence of the depositor. So if I'm a Bahamian and I am banking or I'm conducting business with a bank that's located in another country, I'm making deposits within that bank is considered to be an offshore bank to me because it's outside the country that I am from. And typically, it's in a low tax jurisdiction area. So offshore banks are not in high tax jurisdiction area. You may find one or two, but typically they're located in a low tax jurisdiction area. And they provide financial and legal advantages. So offshore banks are the way to go if you want to make investment and you want to do a lot of saving. Also, offshore banks are the way to go if you want to make a lot of money because offshore bankers get paid a lot of money. Examples of offshore banks here in the Bahamas would be Credit Suisse and Citco Bank and Trust Company. And Credit Suisse is located again East Bay Street. Citco is located across from, well, the last time I checked, was located across from the University of the Bahamas near Scotiabank. And that was our final type of bank that we're going to discuss. So I'm going to present you with some banking review questions, and we're going to go through them, but you're going to answer them and submit the answers to me. So you're going to define the term banks. You're going to describe each of the different types of banks. You're going to state in your opinion what makes central bank different from all other banks. You're going to state at least 4 functions of the central bank. And also I will be forwarding another activity that should be attached to this lesson that you will complete and submit to me. I will also state the deadline for submission of the activity once I forward it. Until next time, see you later.